Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. I'm going to start right away, and then I'll do the preliminary things because I have so much to share in the preview that I don't want to miss a thing. You have won a tug of war for your good or great fortune. You were immersed in the ultimate tug of war battle over what was essentially your wheel of fortune, your destiny in life, what is assigned to you in terms of fate, and again, emphasis on fortune. And it may be unbeknownst to you that you were in this tug of war, or it may have, like many, have been unbeknownst to you for a very long time that you were in a tug of war until you were awakened and realized that you were indeed. And you won this war over your destiny, over your fortune and fate by faith. The forces that you were up against were great, were relentless, were ruthless. Let's say diabolical. I know that word is overused, but in this case, it applies. From the lowest, the highest lowest frequency of words to the highest lowest frequency of words, those were the energies that were being embodied by adversaries and oppositional forces, whether they were actually people, places, or principalities, or all of the above. Now, I say that this was a tug of war over your great fortune, but it wasn't just your ordinary tug of war, good old family fun at the family cookout or in gym class where there's a flag and you just have to pull the other team's flag over to your side. No, I got the image of the tug of war from the likes of Squid Game, where the losing side falls to their demise, and I mean literally to their demise. Eliminated in the most absolute way. Very gruesome, very merciless fall from what ultimately was grace, because again, for many, you had no idea you were in this tug of war. It was like somebody enlisted you, put the rope in your hands, and really fighting over something that you should have never needed to fight over in the first place in many regards. To be conditioned to protect it and to advance and enhance your responsibility, over and stewardship over it is one thing. But many of these oppositional forces went way across the line, way above their pay grade to impose this Five of Swords energy ultimately to win, no matter what the cost, no matter what the casualty, especially no matter where it concerns you. There was a one-track mind, a common goal, and unfortunately, and in some ways fortunately for you, you were attached to it, so you became the target of a great deal of aggression and downright assault, and violence in some cases, whether it be in spirit or in truth. The other thing that I saw is that, which is probably a connection to the oppositional forces, I saw that the wizards, the identities, first I saw it as, Wizard of Oz, where the identity of the wizard is being exposed, where it seemed to be this great and powerful force. But by the end of the movie, in any version, you realize that it's just a man, and it's a man that really pales in comparison to the projection of their power, like what they have ultimately concocted as, is even more performative, I would say, than it is absolute or actual, than it is impactful, let's say. The only impact really is the illusion of such, you know. Like I'm getting right now, like the valley of the shadow of death. There's always something interesting about that phrase for me, because sometimes shadows are casted much grander than what they're projected from. So I'm sensing that right now, like this person's shadow was much bigger than their force, for lack of a better word. So I saw it as one, but then it was like no, many. The wizards and or warlocks behind these masks of power, these influences that are seen. The ones that are unseen are the ones that are being exposed and revealed in real time. Like the sun will spare no shadow, like it will spare no corner of darkness to be exposed when it comes down to seeing who's really been maybe overactive in your life, who's been overactive overall, societally, universally, collectively, in whatever space there is to be a darkness revealed. It's happening. If it's not already if it hasn't already, it's happening. And then at first I saw it as Wizard of Oz, right? But then it also reminded me about the masked figureheads in Squid Game as well, and how their identities were concealed. And I think ultimately at the end of it, they were eliminated. I can't remember what karma they faced at the end. There was something, but up until up until the I think last season, not the final one, but the last season, we didn't really know who the new, what was it? He was like the showrunner or the front runner. I forget his name, who was masked who took over the head guy's place. We ultimately find out that was the son of the creator of the games, the original runner of the games, who was the old man that was in the games at first. And so there's something about that connection, maybe even nepotism, or this generational, I just heard generational stealth being passed down from hand to hand, a cycle that's continuous, also perpetuating curses and confinements and constraints and limitations by way of this passing of power, this continuance of power. That's all being obliterated at this time. That's part of the unmasking and unveiling. And I heard clearly, son of a bitch. Then I heard, no, sons of bitches is what they are. These masked energies and secret powers. They're sons of bitches. and every sense of the word, in some cases literally products of narc farms, let's say, like where their upbringing was just breeding ground for them to ultimately become the assholes that they are. And then there are some that have just grown and groomed themselves to be sons of bitches by their own choices, by their obsessions and possessions. But whatever the case may be, it's a new era of reckoning, where no one's safe in those shadows and in those dark corners anymore. And also I was seeing that there's something lackluster about the passing on of the torch. Like each generation gets weaker, and it's probably more so an era thing as well, because as we evolve creatively, the aura of Earth is less and less conducive to the same evils and darknesses that have been perpetuated lifetime after lifetime or generation to generation. So I think it kind of coincides one and the same, that the generations that are being passed down this power, and it's like right at the moment when they're thinking they're getting the torch, they're really getting the axe. I mean, literally passing the torch. They're really, is the torch all right? That explosive flame that I've been talking about in Sagittarius season, where things are blowing up everywhere, and it's like spontaneous combustion of places and spaces that have been marked ultimately in one way, shape, or form, or another. And so, as I was saying, it's like this passing of this torch to really on account of the older generations having expended their time. Now I'm getting something else, that part, but also in another ruthless way, almost them kind of like retiring themselves to get out of the line of fire and almost allow their children or whomever is, their predecessors, their not predecessors, they would be the predecessors, but their I don't know, their inheritors, whoever, their descendants, let's say, would be to kind of like take the fall, or to, either way, it's like they either want to fall or they're going to steady themselves, but at any cost, they're more hands off now, partially by default, but also again by circumstance, intentionally so. So therefore the forces that were originally by much more reckless and ruthless men at a much more lenient time, or conducive time, I should say, are extremely compromised because their offspring are not really as equipped to carry that torch in a way that would sustain it. And also, time is up for the fuck shit, pretty much. Okay. So that's that. So masks are being ripped off. Dark corners and corridors are being illuminated and exposed. The fortune, the favor, the glory is all conserved, preserved, and still, kept safe for whomever it is assigned to organically, even in the ways where it may appear that things have been spent or rifled or, like ransacked in some cases. There's supernatural provision, for retribution. It's like a sacred reserve for reparation and for retribution. So fear not for those that may be thoughtful about the remnant of their fortunes and what is even left of it, or like what is there to even that's even left to claim. It's all still there, plus some, even more than what was in store, which is the gotcha. All right, and so the other thing is, I told you it was so much. The other thing is that these secret places and spaces, I saw the Magician card a lot. At one point in time, it wouldn't leave the bottom of the deck. Another ode to this insistence to keep the cycle going, or keep negative cycles and curses and things going, but to no avail, because ultimately this is where we landed. Spoiler alert: Queen of Swords and Justice. But one of the reasons why these organizations, affiliations, associations, mindsets, groups, collectives, whatever it is that have, these forces of opposition have been vital in many different forms. It's not just, and shape-shifting was also connected to that mask energy, was also, something that I saw reoccurring as well. But it takes on different forms. It moves around. It literally shapeshifts, so it makes it hard for anything or anyone to be particularly pinpointed, especially from a human or physical perspective, because you just almost never know what you're looking at, and the players change, and now the changing of the guard has tried to commence, and things are always shifting all the time. Everybody protects one another, whether it's a widespread consensus or there are pockets of this consensus and commitment and almost like brotherhood, and maybe in some ways sisterhood, this camaraderie that exists amongst forces that is almost unspoken in a lot of words, very much secret society. But it could happen even in the sense of an unspoken pact within your family, you know, where the men operate a certain way or the women track a certain cycle or whatever the case may be. But on this more from this more grand perspective of it being a conglomerate or an entity of sorts, of a collective of individuals, the reason for the dismembering, I'm just hearing that. Wow, that's wild. Remember I said the fate, the fatal fate of the losing side. So dismembering of these bodies, and I mean that holistically, but hell, maybe, I mean it figuratively, but maybe, actually, I don't know, is on account of an infiltration that happened from an angle that was least suspected. So some type of secret agent or secret infiltration that I saw that ultimately became more or less like the snitch or the plug or the cooperator, or maybe even not intentionally so, although I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but it may be just by default, like somebody was so vulnerable and so vulnerable to investigation in some way, shape, or form, at least in a way that they didn't know, that they ultimately ended up being the scope by which the whole operation could be observed, or a large portion of it, or the higher ups of an organization or association could be observed through the lens of this one particular person. But it could have, I felt more on the side of it being an intentional infiltration, even so to the point where it was someone high up on the inside, whether somebody that rose to high ranks or that just already was. And I was seeing that the motivation for their cooperation with authorities or whatever the case may be, those that have the power to dismember this association, was two-part. I feel like it starts, well, I don't know. I'll say what I saw most prevalently was that there's something in it for them, which usually is with some type of informant or confidant or whatever. There's something in it for them where they've either been promised some type of immunity, but what I really saw is that a deal was struck either for them to be able to maintain some of the resources that have been acquired on account of, whatever their business dealings or practices have been, and or the person is willing to cooperate in an effort to almost like buy time so that they can hide resources, like transfer it abroad or transfer it to secret accounts or other people's names or whatever. Like they're trying to move money in a way that makes it secure, whether it be for their legal protection, which makes sense when we land here, or for when they are released, or for whatever it is that they see. They're just trying to preserve their money, their investments. And so whatever it is they can salvage and save, whatever that hasn't already been frozen, It's like they're trying to really secure that investment by almost distracting with this, like this, like almost surrendered cooperation. Like, yeah, whatever you need, whatever you want, they're willing to be a vessel to pretty much take the whole thing down and anyone with it, as long as they are continuing to believe that they either have time to save what they value, or they're being given the grace to keep some. Whichever it is, I feel like it's a falsehood, because what I ultimately saw many times over is the Nine of Swords. That no matter what a person's intentions are, whether it be the whole of this organization, whatever group or collective this is, however it's represented, it all comes back down to the Nine of Swords, to this moment of despair, when you realize that everything that you invested in has fallen apart, and there really is nothing positive to look forward to for the future. All someone can help but see is the possibility of things continuing to fall apart, or to not get any better, but to only get worse. Maybe even, in a strange twist of fate, manufacturing those outcomes for themselves by way of their anxiety, and their fears. Which could probably also be the justice, or the karma of it all. So so there was an infiltration, again, from an angle that nobody could detect or suspect, probably because it was somebody too deeply invested in the the pledge, or the, what do you call it, like when you are I don't know what to call it, but like I guess the solidarity of the brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever this is, that nobody would expect, considering like we all got so much to lose, that nobody would tell, or nobody would be the whistleblower, so to speak, but not knowing that certain deals have been made or offered, again, to garner more cooperation than what would be typically imagined. But as I said, whatever it was that is promised, or what is intended upon conserving, is ultimately not going to be the case. It could even be that somebody gets away with a few dollars or whatever, and they get their immunity, but there's something, even after the fact, that comes and pretty much is like, thank you, I'll take that. Like at the end of it all, somebody is going to be, or many are going to be, left with nothing to show for their acts, their intentions, their acts, their efforts, their hard work, their dedication, their solidarity, their pledge, their, all of that. It'll be like it was all for nothing. And that might be some of the fear that's wrapped up in that Nine of Swords, is that it just might come down to that. And somebody is seeing it for themselves more than they're seeing any positive outlook. Which again could probably contribute to making it, to ultimately manifesting it for themselves in a poetic justice fate. So the Queen of Swords and the Justice is where we landed. First it was the Queen of Swords, but then this was also peeking out. So I was like, well, that definitely, it's like a double confirmation that justice must be served from all angles, because she's facing this way, he's facing forward, whatever, however you like to see the justice. If she's facing this way, justice is facing forward. It's like there is no corner. 360, justice will be served, and that means from the top to the bottom, from the inside out, from the lowest man on the totem pole to the highest. Like every position will ultimately meet its fate, and the most, in a way that is perfectly fair, and prescriptive for the engagement or activity that each individual committed. Yeah. So that's where we are right now. At 25:15 on the clock. All right, so let's go. Let's see. Let me get a few more cards. Oh, what's that? Not the Magician again. Oh, okay. The the Queen of Pentacles just peeked out as well. Yeah, so it's like retribution must be paid. And that transfer that those cooperators or the cooperator looking to make somehow has gotten stopped or blocked. You know, there's some type of halt to that transition or transfer that was unsuspected. You know, like something that happens like faithfully. You know, like it fatefully happens where, like I said, someone thinks that they got all their bases covered, but they don't. You know, it's either going to be blocked by some last minute gotcha from the justice system where it's like, yeah, we got all that we needed to get. Now they're going to hit you with another charge to pretty much, you know, to ultimately, like, what's the right word? Like eliminate, like one washes the other. I can't think of the word right now, but to ultimately like wipe out the original agreement because there are new charges on the docket now. You know, there's a new persecution or prosecution that ultimately would nullify the original agreement. So when somebody thinks they're safe and they just pretty much sold out their whole operation to secure themselves, they're still going to meet their fate no matter what. One way or another, it's still going to happen. Justice will be served. And as I said, meanwhile, you've already won the tug of war. It's in some ways you may not even known that you were playing or engaged in, and you certainly didn't know how great of a force you were up against. It was like you against the world pulling on the other side. Or let's say the underworld, you against the underworld, because the world, Gaia ain't got nothing to do with this shit. Sons of bitches. Oh, and then you somehow pull, and it's good that you didn't know, because I've said this before, that sometimes like when you know what you're up against, your fear kicks in subconsciously even to defeat you before you are defeated. So sometimes it's good to kind of be blind to the opposition, to the ops, the enemy, the adversary, and not really know its strength or its motives, or, you know, the full force that is coming at you with, because ultimately we know there's no greater force than a divine one. It all has to submit and surrender to the divine no matter what, and to universal order. But in the meantime, in between time, while you building those muscles, sometimes like it's best not to know how much weight is on there, you know, like how much weight, how much resistance you're pulling against. So it all worked out. It all works out in your favor, you know, to stay focused, stay committed, stay devoted. Because as I said, if you are erring on the side of justice, up in an upright sense, you know, in a righteous way, where, you know, you haven't been operating in any particular way to harm anybody else. Everything that you've been doing has been precisely for your own elevation, your own evolution, your own advancement, your own progress and prosperity in spirit and in flesh. You have nothing to worry about. It's smooth sailing at this point, no matter what waves might be projected your way. Is the vessel that you're in energetically at this time can weather anything. And as a matter of fact, there's a navigation system in place that will ultimately reroute you, you know, out of the way of the storm. I almost said the eye of the storm, but out of the way of the storm, or keep you in the eye of the storm, even as it's happening all around you, to the point where you won't even realize it or won't even know. All right. So anyway, let's see what else we got. That's 30 minutes right there. Thank you for listening. Let's see. I told you it was a lot. By the way, it is Monday, November. Oh, pardon me. First of all, 11:44 on the clock, on the dot. Monday, December, big baby, 1st. Finally in that big Sag December energy that I love so dearly. Check out the Sagittarius reading that I did on Saturday, a couple days ago, if you haven't already, particularly if you are a Sag, if you love a Sag, if you're friends with a Sag, you got Sages in your family, you got a lot of Sag in your chart or significant placements. There's a little something for everybody. So, and it's kind of a fun message, sort of. I mean, some parts are bleak, but you know how we do as Sages. We find the humor and the light in anything. So there's something of value for you in it for you, I'm sure. All right, let's see. Yeah, look at this. Like I definitely saw this energy, like, and this came up yesterday, the other reading too, where it's like this almost relentless rampage energy, but it's too late, you know, for these aggressive endeavors, you know, whether it is to interject, to have an alibi, to make excuses, to object. There's another one. If we're talking about an actual court case, given the Queen of Swords and the Justice together, it could be like a motion that someone wants to file, you know, to stop a proceeding or to stop a judgment or refute a judgment, and it's just too small, it's too little, it's like it won't be accepted, you know, like it'll be dismissed with prejudice at this point if it's something actual, you know, and practical. So where someone may have been able to cause delays in this, you know, in proceedings, whatever they are, maybe even in the transfer of material, wealth, some type of money to a place where it's actually supposed to go, you know, i.e. as it is in Squid Game, like the fortune that is due to you, you know, after the end of all of the trials and tribulations of the game itself. It's like trying to intercept that or keep it from, like to kind of sew it up in the system, but that's over, that's done. Like whatever is supposed to be paid out or transferred or what's the right word, repaid, refunded, whatever, you know, like whatever the judgment or settled is overdue. It's overdue. Like at this point, it's due with interest almost, which is probably why it's something that is going to be more than what it was in the beginning of in the inception of whatever this is. Ooh, look at this. Like, yeah, like that motion was denied, like I said, dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice. I mean, prejudice in such a way where it's like you can't ever circle back to this, like you can't ever circle back to this case again. And also, like if it's given like a case closed type of energy too, for the investigative aspect of whatever this organization or band of wizards and warlocks, you know, a society of wizards and warlocks has been. this is the end of that, where there's still, there's still been a relentless fight to maintain vitality, again, to pass that torch, pass that sword on, to knight some new blood, perhaps, like initiate some new blood. And it's like, nope, not on the Divine's watch. Nope. It's like dismembered, dismantled, dissolved. Like back in the day, on college campuses and stuff, if you had Greek organizations, particularly the black ones, always in and out of trouble. The white ones do as they please. At least I see, I sensed for the most part. But the black fraternities and sororities were always susceptible to keeping their practices secret, because nationally there was a law against hazing. So you could be prosecuted. If something terrible enough happened, you could definitely be sent to jail. But one of the main detriments that could happen to you, to kind of almost put you in, unfortunately, like a Walking Dead type of energy on the campus, was if your chapter got suspended. So you could be a part of the organization and have, done all of the fulfilled all of the requirements, to pay your dues and everything else underground and underworld that you would do to be a part of an organization, only for your chapter to be suspended and you be prohibited from doing anything in the name of that organization. So you can't throw parties in the name of the organization. You can't go to functions on a national level or international level for some, as a recognized member. So suspension was definitely a fear of many, like secret, let's say secret fraternal societies or sororities, not to get caught, because if you did, almost always your fate would be to be suspended. And I feel like there's something that is making me sense that here, where it's like, it's like you've done everything to be a part of the organization, but you get to reap none of the rewards and benefits of it at a certain point, like when you've overstepped some bounds or whatever, or, been judged a certain type of way. Now it's like, not only are you dismantled, but you're dysfunctional, but they're dismantled. So it's like, even if these people are spared their vitality, or maybe not even necessarily put in jail in some cases, it's like the reputation of each person involved is scarred, and scorned and scorched again. And the facilitation of that association, the benefits of it, the access of it, the rewards of it, is completely null and void. So again, it's like waking up to nothing for all your hard work, because you don't have any resource to access anymore, or everybody's too scared to operate in that function for fear of incurring some more harsh judgment or punishments, like conditions of their settlements or their judgments, where you can't be seen in certain functions ever again, or maybe as a CEO of a company, or as a or in a certain town or city. Like, who was it that, I think it was Young Thug, like he can't go back to his county, or I don't know, it might be Atlanta altogether. He can't even go back to the place he called home as a part of his conditional release, So it's like something about a displacement, again, a dismembering here, where whatever there may be an objection to, it's, it's overruled, let's say. Yeah, by a higher authority. Yeah, and then we got the Queen of Wands here. And I was seeing this energy as like very, like an unsuspecting block is how it was coming up in the pre-shuffle. where every time there was a potential for progress or a glimmer of hope, it was like, no, I'm gonna just slide in right here, like not it ain't even a big fuss, not saying much, just the presence of alone is making an impact. You know what I mean? Like somebody, like some type of, I don't know, like it's definitely a fiery force that is selective and directive, so where there could be, let's say, change or transformation to occur, it's all conditional on how on how it's wielded in favor of the greatest good. That's what I'm getting. I'm not saying that well, but it's like where there is potential for transmutation, transformation here, but it won't be in favor of those that are unjustified to receive it. It's like that energy is almost being transmuted, like this death frequency, this big change, this big shift is being harnessed and directed toward what, I don't know, I guess maybe we'll see in another card, but I feel like ultimately towards something far more productive and prosperous. It's like all that may have been negative about this association, from its underworld workings to even the way that its tentacles be spread into natural world affairs that should have been off limits, to people that were unsuspecting, to innocents. As bad and as sinister, as diabolical as it may have been, it somehow is being transmuted and transferred into something highly productive, highly efficient type of energy, that gives birth and life to something else, almost like an alchemical transference is what I'm getting here. So there's light and vitality that can come out of something that is like so dark. Wow, look at this, the Three of Cups. And to be a total cause for celebration. And reunion, and maybe a restoration of joy or reclamation of joy. Here is what I'm getting with this Three of Cups. Where it's not even a sad occasion or circumstance. It's like the components of the fate as it, unfolds. Some of them are bleak, but the end result is delightful. Like, that's what I'm getting. Something like that. Like when all of the ins and outs of like the dirt that was done, what was happening in the underworld, the undercurrent of creation, what so-called powerful men were imposing and manipulating and against the masses, or in a collective sense, the impacts that were made and also incurred. It's like, damn, that's real fucked up. Like it's like the concept of Squid Game itself, especially the first season, when you realize like this one man got everybody fighting for their lives, like like just for his own personal entertainment, pretty much. It's like, damn, that's fucked up. Although in the end, there was a winner. I feel like there's a collective victory or triumph that is underway here, where it's not just one. Unfortunately, that's actually the mold and the will that's being broken, is that there's only a select number of spots. There's only one there. And even if you show and prove that you are deserving of a certain fate or fortune, or capable of conducting it, worthy of reception, you still might not get it, you know, because there'll be somebody there to interrupt and claim it as their own, or tell you, project onto you that you don't deserve it, or it's not yours, or it belongs to someone else, or you got to fight to the death for it, or whatever. You know, all of that stuff is dissipating now. Those illusions that were being puppeteered by these so-called powers that be, which peace to Shavi Zane powers that are being unmasked as we speak. You know, the illusion was only being upheld by these peoples and principalities. So when you eliminate that blanket of confusion and contortion of the truth, what you're left with is something, you know, that's celebratory, that's freeing, that's liberating, that's a cause for toast, apparently, you know. So let's see, a couple more and then I'm out of here. Let's see. Like a jailbreak is what I'm getting. You know, like I said, this is transmutation of energy, like almost a reclamation of what should organically be in those cups, that should be in the possession of whomever it's assigned to, or whomever it belongs to, naturally, or organically, effortlessly, easefully. And sometimes, I haven't said this in a long time, but sometimes I used to see the Three of Cups as like angels and ancestors celebrating, you know, things that are ultimately being made manifest in the earth, like those unseen forces, you know, at least by our natural eyes, are celebrating some ascension or some triumph of confidence and creativity that has ultimately made it possible for this transfer to happen successfully, without delay, without blockage, without reroute or, you know, detours. Like something has been broken through, and it's allowing, you know, for like an overflow, or like a filtering in of light, perhaps of spirit, whatever it is, you know, of passion. It's like a crack in the dam, like it's starting off kind of slow, or it has, but ultimately it's about to break through like a flood. Like the levees are about to break in the most bountiful way. I guess for those that are in the line of destruction, it looks and feels like something else. Oh, as I said that, yeah. But for those that are in alignment with their true fate and fortune, you know, that's what's coming to you. That Three of Swords, like the Three of, I'm sorry, no, cancel that. Not the Three of Swords. Three of Swords is for this guy right here, this energy. Three of Cups. Three of Cups. And the Seven of Swords, even most sinister intentions, is not, you know, it's already been canceled back here, whether they realize it or not. This could even be that energy, like I said, of somebody who thinks they're getting away scot-free. You know, they think they just made the deal of a lifetime, where they get to be immune to their crimes and their infractions, and they get to save, you know, to walk away with some dough. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's like just when they thought they got away, they run into some sign, or become engaged with some sign that, you know, it's like, well, what are they celebrating for? They shouldn't be happy. I'm the one that won. I'm the one that got the, you know, got the leg up. And then they realize, like, no, actually, you know, like, you didn't hear the judgment. Like, this is a celebration of a judgment call, where not only has a case been closed, but is never to be reopened or revisited again, except for now you in particular, forced that thinks you got away with something, are about to be tried in a whole new case where you are the center of the persecution. Just you. Nobody to blame shift, nobody to scapegoat, just you. And the evidence is mounted high and it's quite convincing. Like, there's no way out. There's no lie. There's no defense from what's being accused. Wow, look. Exactly. Worse than the Three of Swords, because it's the Five of Cups, where it's not in your head anymore. You know, the only thing worse it could be is the Five of Pentacles, which would be the cause of someone's depression, despair in this case, because this is an energy that is obsessed with material security in such a way that they were willing to pretty much throw anybody under the bus. Hell, even they damn self in some ways, you know, like, didn't even realize how they were running themselves over. Because if it wasn't for whatever this infiltrating energy was that was willing to talk, making a deal, it's like the stronghold would have been solidified. It might not have been as weak, as strong as it has been before, especially with this passing of the torch, and new blood coming in, or new whatever, you know, new members, or whatever the case may be. It ultimately still would have fallen to its own demise, probably more internally than anything. It would have fallen apart. But somebody really expedited and accelerated the dismembering on account of their cooperation, which they thought they were doing to, you know, to help themselves. But as I said, this Five of Cups is when it comes down to it, it's going to be like crying over spilled milk, because they can't take back any of the actions that they did to be prosecuted or persecuted. They can't take back any of the actions and things that they did to cooperate for what they thought was going to be their scapegoat. And they also won't be able to see themselves out of the entanglement of whatever new persecution there may be, or prosecution there may be, indictments, let's say, that there may be, of which they don't have an excuse, they don't have an alibi, they don't have a strong defense for. So it's like, either way, somebody's going to wish that they could go back to the very beginning where they were not associated at all, but they're at least going to wish that they didn't sell out, you know, the homies or the squad or the whatever, the organization, because it didn't do them any good in the end. It did nobody any good, because now they have no network, nobody to call. They're pretty much outcasted, even for those that may still be lingering members, you know, disassociated members, and those outside of that. There's like no support system for them to resource and for support's sake. And as I said, their resources are diminished, and their this transfer that they were coveting, which would have been like some type of financial rock, you know, like a little rainy day type of reserve that they were counting on. They're going to find it's going to be established some way that can be. And it's funny, because the play was made to extend this offer to conserve some funds on account of being completely transparent, so that it could actually be known where funds were, so that when they made the second play, I'm just getting this now, like when they made the second play to prosecute, I keep saying persecute, like it's probably a lot more spiritual than it is physical, but to prosecute this particular person, that they would know where all the bones are buried, and to be able to like, no, we're gonna snatch that too. Sorry. Thanks for all your help though. Because the justice, like I said, is from all angles. And our justice system, like sometimes it's hit or miss. Sometimes they get it right and sometimes they totally don't. But in this particular case, it's like justice that's being is being supported and like undergirded by supreme justice, which is the highest court spiritually, more than it is necessarily physically or naturally. We talking about the highest judgment of creation is underway now, especially when we're talking about the judgment card, which did pop up, and the Wheel of Fortune. That's a fate that cannot be corrupted. It can't be stopped. It can't be reversed. It's automatic. All right, so let's see. Let's see what's under here. I'm gonna stop there. Wow, look, the 10 of Wands. Yeah, it's over. And this is the energy of that tug of war on the other side. And it's like now somebody's left. They playing tug of war against I don't even know, like a force that they just don't even have the energy to withstand at this point. And it's like this is the struggle that is ending and beginning a new cycle. It's like where someone thought they had alleviated a lot of their stress and worries, and the stronghold of their fates. It's like everything's coming back at once, like, oh no, and this and this and this. Hell, might be stuff that they ain't even do that's getting piled on, like I ain't even do that, or that they didn't realize they would be held accountable for, held responsible for. It just wasn't in the calculation. So it's like everything is becoming too much burden to bear. And it's like when you sit down to lift weights or whatever, not like I'm some avid weightlifter, but where somebody put on, you were expecting to just lift like, 100 pounds, like 50 on each side, and somebody puts 500 on each side. It's like, it's somebody that ultimately is liable to, again, ultimately be dismembered themselves, whether it be in spirit or body or mind, just by the stress of it all and the despair of it all, the anxiety, the depression, the emotional instability, the mental imbalance, the frailty literally in their body, and how these stresses are manifesting. That's an eyelash, by the way. I just scratched my eye. Yeah, like relentless. And this is their frail little mind. They're seeing it all coming too. Again, the cause for is like seeing it all coming, and this is all that you have to guard yourself. This is all that you have, is just, again, your frail little delicate vulnerable mind. You have all the sight and vision in the world. You can clearly see what's on its way. what's coming down the pike, what's liable, or could even, practically speaking, like somebody reading all of the charges that have been trumped up against them. And now somebody may have even expended most of their resources to defend themselves the first time. Now they got to pay for another round of legal protection, and that could be the karma of how somebody's resources dwindle on account of having to defend themselves all over again, or whatever it takes to kind of get themselves out of, an indomitable situation, an unyielding situation. Because as I said, this is like you seeing everything, the indictment, you're seeing all the charges, and it's like, first of all, you don't really have much of an excuse or an alibi, again, a defense for it. And you don't have a resource or a support system to fight for you either. And you're supposed to pretty much, it's anticipated that you're going to end up taking all of these charges on the chin. And it might end up that the energy that thought they were throwing everybody else under the bus will ultimately end up with the most harsh sentence of them all in the end. And there'll be no way for them to protect themselves against it at that point. Somebody could be facing like up to 10 years, either in prison, or they might do a minimum of 10 years for whatever these charges are. Or since I brought up Young Thug, I think he's on probation for at least 10 years or 15, I forget. It's some like ridiculous amount of time where it's like a whole cycle that he's pretty much going to be under supervision, where one wrong move and it could be back to prison to do his whole sentence with no grace at that point, no exceptions. So that's what somebody could be facing here. Or or multiple someones could be facing. Again, these sons of bitches that just couldn't keep their hands to themselves, their ideals in a positive space, their intentions pure, their wands in their pants or their pockets, whichever one. They couldn't get right. They couldn't get right. And now they have the opportunity to get righteous, or else, to rehabilitate themselves from the inside out first and foremost, or to continue to face. And now with the tables being turned, it will be a relentless cycle of misfortune. And it's like the universe ain't got nothing but time ultimately at this point. So it's like, if you don't want to clean it up in this life sentence, so to speak, then maybe you'll come back and do it again, or maybe your children will carry it for you. But either way, justice will be served. Reparations and retribution will be paid in full with interest. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Congratulations on that tug of war win. You pulled out a victory and didn't even know you were fighting for one. So congrats to you. Salute to you, as a matter of fact. Enjoy yourself. Until next time, as always, I'll leave you with peace.